Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. Derek Entertaining series, who's Nintendo suing this week and why are they suing them? And we have some very interesting updates to the lawsuit from Pocket Pair and Nintendo. If you weren't aware, I've done videos in 2025 and late 2024 about Nintendo using patents to sue Palworld and the parent company Pocket Pair because they feel like they're getting a little bit too close to the Pokemon Gold. And I said that these were some of the most vague, unenforceable, and probably shouldn't have even been granted patents out there. Nintendo was just being absolutely punitive when it came to suing, and now we have the response from Pocket Pair, and it is very interesting, and basically it's exactly what I expected and others did as well. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. What it really came down to when Nintendo sued Palworld and Pocket Pair were two mechanics: capturing something in the game world with a ball and having a certain chance of being able to be successful or not, as well as how mounts are ridden and switched over in-game. When we talked about that, we talked about how incredibly vague those two patents were and how there's a ton of games that use that concept long before Nintendo actually ever filed those patents. We also talked about the fact that there's a term, prior art, which means that if something has done this beforehand, then these patents should have been granted in the first place because they are not novel and unique. And that's exactly what Pocket Pair's lawyers are going to be arguing today. The fact that these things have actually happened in the past, not only in their own games, Craftopia, but in other games as well. But throwing the ball into the actual playfield and affecting the characters in front of them and even capturing them is what Nintendo's really arguing about here. And sure, throwing a ball into a playfield is one of those things everyone thinks Pokemon. That does not mean it did it first, and that does not mean that it should be getting a patent for something so simple as that. Because I always joked around, throwing a ball into the playfield and affecting the game in front of you could mean that every single Madden from its inception is a violation because there's a ball involved. And that is why these patents can be so vague and be so basically trolly. Nintendo is using the most simple terms here to go after a competitor that they feel is cutting into their profits, because Palworld definitely has become a massive success, and Nintendo's thinking to themselves, well, that should be our money, not Palworld's, because they're doing something we do. And we even showed you the patents in previous videos where they're showing those balls being thrown into the playfield and how they can affect things. But just think, before I even go over the actual games, the Palworld lawyers are talking about how many games where you throw something in front of you and affect the game world. It could be Call of Duty with grenades, it could be absolutely anything. And this is definitely a very strong defense as far as Pocket Pair is concerned. When I talked about this, I said so long as the Japanese court system is fair and doesn't err on the side of Nintendo just because they are the bigger company, that this seemed like a very easy lawsuit for Pocket Pair to win, because what Nintendo was arguing was so incredibly vague. You could give a basic example of maybe a dozen or 24 games that did it before that should and would invalidate Nintendo's patents. Now, I'm not very good at Japanese patent law, not a country I ever worked in, as far as actually having to deal with importing or exporting products or any of the legal ramifications thereof, so it's something I can't speak to the Japanese court system and how fair they might be, but if you do know, leave me a comment down below. And they've gone over all of the different patents, and what they're going to argue would be an invalidation of them. And as far as throwing something into the play world, they even mentioned their own game, Craftopia, which takes place before the patent was filed, to say that that's exactly what happened, including games like Titanfall 2, Far Cry 5, and Tomb Raider. And if we take a look at the Craftopia launch trailer, you're going to notice something very similar to Pokemon as well as to Palworld, and one of the things that Nintendo is suing over. The eagle-eyed among you might catch it the first time, but I'll definitely replay it over and over again. And if you're going to say this just seems like Breath of the Wild made by a different company in the same art style, I 100% understand that. Palworld definitely plays the cards a little bit too close to the vest when it comes to quote-unquote inspiration, but it is one of those things. You really can't get a patent on overall design, language, and vibe, maybe on a logo or something else like that. You can get that copyright, but honestly, art style really isn't something that's going to go to court. If you missed it earlier, you're going to see definitely not Princess Zelda here throwing a sphere or maybe a diamond into a playfield, capturing an animal, and affecting the game world in front of her. And that's just down to one of Nintendo's examples of something that they're suing over on the patent infringement. And even though Pocket Pair didn't mention Pokemon Go in Grand Theft Auto 5, it's an example that I used in a video maybe 4 months ago to show that this was not a novel or unique concept and had been done before. Now, I can understand why their lawyers might not want to bring this up in a court filing, because obviously this is infringing. You're not really allowed to use the characters from Pokemon and mod them into Grand Theft Auto 5. If Nintendo wanted to come around and basically remove this mod from the internet, they would well be within their legal rights to do so, but it did show another example of throwing something into the playfield and affecting the world around it, and that's something that this filing basically hangs its hat on, and it's one of those things. So long as everything is played fair in court, I cannot imagine a situation of Nintendo actually winning this lawsuit, because for every example that somebody like Palworld and Pocket Pair provides to the courts, there's probably another 100 great examples out there that they could have provided. They're going to bury the courts in example after example of this happening beforehand, so that it's one of the situations any judge, and if it does go to a jury trial, which I don't believe it would look at it and have to say, okay, yes, this existed long before Nintendo got the patents, and therefore Nintendo should have never been granted the patents in the first place, and patent infringement is not occurring on Pocket Pair's side of things because the patents would be invalidated, because that is the reality of this. Palworld and Pocket Pair's first defense is the invalidation of these patents. What they're looking for is a judge to decide the patent should have been granted in the first place, therefore patent infringement cannot occur because the patents are not valid. Their secondary defense, if the patents somehow hold up in court, and I wouldn't expect them to, is saying that even if the patents are good, the content on offer in Palworld is not infringing enough to actually be infringement. So it's a double defense here. Basically, they have a fallback second line of defense when they say if the patents are still good, then it doesn't infringe. And they talk about so many other games as far as the throwing mechanic and the mounting mechanic are involved. And they even mention a Dark Souls 3 mod here where you can throw a ball into the playfield and affect the characters in front of you, capture them, and even get percentages and likelihoods of whether or not you'd be able to do so. And this was news to me when I read the court filing, because I had never heard of this Dark Souls 3 mod, but it definitely is exactly what Nintendo is talking about, and it definitely is something that occurs first. Between Craftopia and this example, I feel like you basically have a slam dunk ironclad court case against Nintendo when it comes to saying Nintendo shouldn't have been given those patents. And just to be clear one more time, a patent has to be novel, new, and unique to be granted. If there is prior art, and what that means is a prior example of the exact same thing you're seeking a patent for already existing, you don't get granted a patent for it because you didn't invent it, it already existed. So when Palworld and Pocket Pair's lawyers file these filings and mention these games, they're going to be introducing into court evidence, and I'm sure even gameplay footage like I'm showing you here, that basically tells the judge, look, what they are saying they created was created long before they even filed for the patent, therefore they didn't create it, it's not a patent infringement situation because the patent is invalid. And that's what I would expect to happen as well. Now, as far as the mount situation is concerned, the second patent that Nintendo is going after, they mention Arc, which has a whole mount and riding system in it that again is exactly what Nintendo is patenting and suing Pocket Pair over, except again it occurred earlier than the court filing for the patent in the first place. So it seems like Nintendo's goose is a little bit cooked on this one, because this again, I'm just showing you 3 examples in the video that should be able to win a court case, but Pocket Pair has basically given another 24 examples of games that came before any of Nintendo's filings that would also be able to use as a defense. You'll see there, dude throws an otter into the lake and it comes back with something. Kind of seems like throwing a Pokeball into a playfield with an animal and coming back. So I'm sure you could use Arc for multiple different defenses, and each one should hold up. Now here's the reality of the court system though in basically every country. Just because you are right and correct does not mean you're going to end up winning a case. This could be a situation where for some reason or another Nintendo still triumphs, even though the overwhelming amount of evidence is in somebody like Palworld and Pocket Pair's favor. And trust me, you want Pocket Pair to win here, not Nintendo, even if you're the biggest Nintendo and Pokemon fan out there, because if this actually goes through, it is just going to dissuade so many developers from going near any sort of genre where they think someone like Nintendo would sue them. So much of gaming, so much of art, film, media, television, and music is based on inspiration, taking little bits and pieces of things here and there, and combining them and recombining them until you get a completely different thing coming out the back end. If this lawsuit wins and Pocket Pair is found to have infringed on Nintendo's patents, you're going to end up in a situation where no one really wants to try to do anything that might be too similar or even slightly similar to something Nintendo has done, because they think to themselves, well, Nintendo's just going to sue me. And we're talking about companies that love to sue everyone for absolutely everything. Nintendo takes the brass ring in that contest. They are first place every day, all day, and twice on Sunday, which is very disappointing. But this seems like a situation where Pocket Pair should be winning this lawsuit. These patents should be invalidated because they even showed in a previous game of their own that they were using this mechanic long before Nintendo obtained those patents, and that should be enough to have those patents invalidated and the entire lawsuit be dismissed. They may even go for some lawyer fees at the end if they'd like. But honestly, it's a very interesting update to this because when we talked about these lawsuits, so many of you commented different games that had the same mechanics I talked about prior art and said Pocket Pair's best defense is going to be look at these dozens upon dozens of games that did it long before Nintendo did it, and that's exactly what they're doing. So next time there's more information, I'll definitely update the video, but I hope you guys enjoyed and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.